welcome to the Film Vomit Podcast, an extension of the Vomit series of podcasts. As always, we're hosts Mac Taylor and Cole Selby, and today we are here to talk about scary stories to tell in the dark from 2019. Cole, had you seen this movie before?
No, I did not. I wanted to. It looked cool when it did come out. It came out like 2019, didn't it?
Yeah, because I saw it in theaters when it dropped.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts going in, and what happened after?
Well, the main like draw I got from the film was the name Guillermo del Toro. Whenever his name's on something, I kind of already have like a preconceived thing about it. Like I have a bit more of a higher expectation whenever he's a part of a film, because he never really lets me down. And he didn't. And I know he's just a producer on this film.
And he designed the monsters. So.
Yeah, designed monsters. I think he helped the screenplay and everything.
Basically just the monster stuff, like anything to do with creature stuff he was involved with, but which he's one of the best like monster makers in the modern filmmaking world. So
I think Pan's Labyrinth comes up to mind quite easily whenever people think Guillermo del Toro. But yeah,
Hellboy.
Hellboy, the
Shape of Water.
Yeah, Shape of Water. That was pretty cool.
The guy knows how to make
but I had a higher expectations, and they were reached. I thought like I'm disappointed by the film. Coming out of it, it's definitely like a tame.
Yes, it's a good horror film to get like a younger kid into. Like we're trying to get like somewhat like a child into like spoopy movies. Like this would be a good like starter for sure, because there's creepy imagery for sure. They do a good job of like making it look like the books.
Yes,
like the illustrations.
It is really good. Yeah, actually, I was taking a look back at the books a little bit recently too. The art mostly. They did really well with like remaking like that feel. That the books did.
So like there is a lot of like really disturbing imagery, but as far as like no one like officially dies except for like the sheriff guy. Like everybody else gets like taken away.
Yeah.
So there's not a whole lot of like gore or like viscera. It's more so just like creepy. Yeah.
Like that. Like there's no like guts being spilled or anything. There's no huge plumes of blood getting thrown around.
Right.
Yeah. But it still attaches to that creepiness by having such good imagery throughout the whole thing and cinematography, and as well as having really good practical effects as well.
Yes. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to jump right in. We're going to talk about this. So basically, the movie is set in 1968 throughout like one of the elections where Nixon would eventually get elected. I'm not entirely sure why they chose this time period.
Yeah, I assume that a lot of people kind of nitpick when there's like teenagers in a horror film, like they don't nitpick because like why don't they use their phones, why don't they use the internet to look up stuff? And
lately everybody went to the 80s and they're like, nah, we'll just go to the 60s.
Yeah,
I can appreciate
it is. Yeah, it's kind of weird going back that far. I don't really get that 1960s feel too much.
No, it feels like modern filmmaking trying to look like the 60s.
Yeah, but it does fill in those gaps. They can't just go get information by Googling it. They got to go to the library.
Yeah. And they play the Season of the Witch song, which is actually a pretty nice backdrop to like what's happening here. And basically we meet our main characters here, Stella, who is a huge horror fan and a bit of an outcast, and her two friends Augie and Chuck. And they use walkie-talkies to communicate like the kids in summer of '84. And then we meet Ramon the Drifter.
Yeah.
Kid just bouncing around town to town.
Yeah. Which we do get why.
We get why later.
Yeah, later.
And we meet Tommy and his friends who are just straight up psychopaths. Like
they're just dickheads.
They could have been the antagonists of this movie the entire time.
Yeah.
Like they're just beating the shit out of Scarecrow for like no reason. It's just a Scarecrow, dude.
beat the shit out of it. Man. Like, I don't like the way it looks at me.
It is a creepy looking Scarecrow. Harold the Scarecrow is kind of like the mascot of this movie. Like, it's on all the posters typically.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Chuck is fishing shit out of his toilet to throw at the bullies later. And his sister like walks in on him, and there's like a fun little back and forth there. And we see their costumes as Stella's going to be a witch, a dead witch. Chuck wanted to be Spider-Man, but his mom made like a man spider suit. And Augie is basically like an old like jokester character. Perot is what it's called. So like a sad clown, essentially.
Yeah.
Very sad clown. So they trick Tommy essentially into stealing their candy. Like he's like holding out the bag. Like no one walks like this with their candy.
Yeah.
And he takes it and then throws the shit at him and eggs and everything. And so they get chased by the bullies, but the bullies were with Chuck's sister. So she's a part of this too. I don't know why you'd want to date the town psychopath. Because even say later, like he was looking forward to killing communists. Like this kid was like a literal psychopath about to go to war.
I can't wait to kill commies.
So all the jocks get bats and start chasing all these kids who just hide in a car in a drive-in. Let's get in a random car, which happens to be Ramon's car. And Tommy and them are chased off by the theater people because, you're fucking blocking everybody's view in the damn drive-in playing Night of the Living Dead because we don't have to pay for Night of the Living Dead. Yeah. But Night of the Living Dead did also come out in 1968. So that was a good, tie-in there. Like it was a good use of Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
And Ramon and Stella, like they click instantly. Like you can tell there's Chuck and Augie not so much clicking with Ramon at the start. They're kind of just cock blocking him here. And the jocks brought up Stella's mom, and that's not cool because she basically left town, skipped on him.
Yeah.
Sad stuff, emotions running around. And they're like, oh, hey, by the way, you want to go to this house where all these kids got murdered? And they're like, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that.
Yeah, I guess there just wasn't enough movies made to deter kids from doing such stupid things.
Like going to a haunted house.
Yeah, fucking like, don't do that. If there's an entire house abandoned where people have been murdered in the past, don't go there.
And a family locked one of their own in a basement.
Yeah, like that.
And she told scary stories through walls. Yeah. Let's not do this.
There's no good reason. There's a lot of red flags. Don't go to this fucking house.
So they go there and it's locked, and Augie's like, oh shit, well, all right, let's go home. And Ramon, of course, picks the lock because he's the bad boy character. So he's like expert lock pick. And so they're like looking around, and Chuck goes to scare Augie and has this weird moment where he's like hiding in a closet, and it like turns back to like when the house was still like lived in, and it's like this old lady and a dog just sitting in a room that looks at him. And he's like, oh shit. He closes the door and you hear like the footsteps, and then it's just Augie opening the door. So it's like a good like jump scare, like, oh, like a lot of suspense, a lot of built up suspense in this movie.
Yeah, that should have been the key to the time to leave.
Yeah, like if
don't stay.
If you see like ghost ladies, you should go.
Like it's surpassed Ghost Lady. Like everything changed. Like there's no way for you to even like talk
Explain
around that. like if you saw a figure, you could say, oh, it's the curtains or something. No, everything changed. The lighting changed. There was a dog. like there's so much shit that can't be explained by that point. Like I don't care if my friends thought I was crazy. I would leave. I'm sorry. Like I'm not gonna stay.
But they don't
after
leave.
Seeing that.
They find Sarah's basement room.
That's why we got a movie.
And then they find her book, which she wrote all the stories in blood.
Ooh, man.
Which really couldn't give her ink.
No, like it's spooky. So
she even has like a specific pen that like could hold blood in it. Like you just stab yourself and it holds it in there. Like
like no.
Every time I see like her writing with the blood, I think of that the Simpsons episode where Sideshow Bob is like writing in blood on the letters, and he like writes that letter, and then he's like makes a shopping list, and then he goes to like write another thing, and then he passes out. The guy's like, "Use a pen, Sideshow Bob." That's all I could think of. So yeah, they find the book and decide like we should take this.
Yep. Just take it.
And then Tommy shows up and locks them in a room.
Yeah, which is pretty shitty. He kicks down the
Ruthie, the sister.
Yeah, Ruthie.
And she's like, all right, that's enough. Don't brutally murder my brother. And he's like, oh, well, fuck you.
Fuck you. I'll murder you too. And then locks him. Like that was pretty fucked up. Like and he just leaves. Like, what was his plan?
They totally would have left him there. Like if the ghost had not magically unlocked this door, these kids were fucked. But nevertheless, spoopy stuff happens. Sarah lets them go.
Yeah.
And they see that Tommy has trashed and vandalized Ramon's car and was super racist about it.
Yeah. I guess a lot more people were racist back then too.
It was the 60s. It was not a great time to be anything but white dude.
But pretty fucking shitty.
Yeah. And then Stella's like, hey, Ramon, come look at my spoopy room where she's got all this, classic horror decorations and magazines. And she writes. She's all about the spoopy.
Yep.
And he's like, you should go out to the city and become a writer. And she's like, I can't leave my dad. He needs me.
Yeah.
That actually is a good storyline about her. Like her dad doesn't have like a lot of the times in this situation where you have like a mom skipping town and the daughter feeling the need to look after the dad, he'd be like this like alcoholic, can't handle himself. And no, he works a lot. He seems like a normal dude who loves his daughter.
Yeah. She's
just genuinely concerned about it.
That's not really something you see like outside like animated movies, like a single dad.
Yeah, and like, but not played for like the drunk or something.
And not played like it's that's something you don't really see very often. It is pretty nice.
So yeah, that it was I know I'm gonna make jokes about it, not really meaning much to the plot.
Yeah,
it's actually a well-written storyline.
Yeah.
And then we see that the story of Harold is being freshly written in blood. And no one is writing it, and we're still not super alarmed yet.
Yeah. I've noticed people don't really like react the way I feel like people would.
The story's writing itself. I'm like, literal blood is just appearing from nowhere, making a story, and you're not throwing the book in the ground and running away, because that's what I would do.
Yeah. Like, I'm gone. I'm sorry. I'm done.
They're like, oh, let's see what the story says.
I feel like the only like rational like action taken against like a weird event in this movie was taken by the sheriff later on. He's like the only rational dude to me. Like well, I'll talk about it later, but like I think he's just a little like right when it happens.
Yeah.
Like we'll talk about it later, but it's like I like that, honestly. I thought it was funny.
So Tommy is sent, like he gets home and his mom's like, you didn't deliver the eggs. You got to go do that now. I'm like, it's like 2 a.m. You're sending him to someone's house with eggs at like 2 a.m. But we need an excuse to get him in the cornfield in the middle of the night.
Yep.
And then Harold starts teleporting.
Yeah.
Because he's there. And then he walks down the field, but now he's over there.
Yeah.
And then he's not even on the pole anymore. And he's just standing there. And Tommy just decides to stab him with the pitchfork. I'm like, he's still a scarecrow.
Like the whole middle section is wood. Like
There's
he
a
wasn't even,
giant hole in him.
yeah, he wasn't even stabbing really into anything.
He's just like, I gotcha.
Yeah, he could have just pushed him over.
But then the Scarecrow stabs Tommy, and,
Yeah.
and it stabbed him good. And then
Mhm.
Tommy starts like vomiting straw, and it's like coming out of his
Yeah.
ears and his nose and his eyes. It's actually one of the more like brutal ways so someone goes here, and he
Yeah.
basically turns into a scarecrow.
Yeah. It's honestly pretty. It's I kind of it's like gruesome without like the gore.
Without the gore.
You know?
It's just like his straw is literally just taking over his body.
Yeah, he's like pulling at like the wound on his stomach. It's just like straw everywhere. Yeah, it's a pretty cool scene. Honestly.
Yeah, it's very
pretty
cool.
Nice.
Meanwhile, the sheriff immediately blames the only not white person in town. He's like, "Oh, kid went missing. Must have been this Ramon kid." Hey,
like I mean, I would understand if he brought up the fact that he was new to town and no one knew him.
But no, he basically just blamed the fact that he was Hispanic.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Well, pretty fucked up. He was probably born in the US, so like it's skin color for you, ain't it, buddy?
So
it's pretty rad.
So Tommy's gone, and Stella's like, it was the book. And Ramon's like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. But like, blood was writing itself. I think everything's out the window here. Mm-hmm. And they go and they see a scarecrow in Tommy's jacket. And he's like, well, that could, and that could actually have just been putting a jacket on a scarecrow. But like, still, it was a little weird that he was wearing that night for it. Mm-hmm. So Stella, she's like, I'm putting the book back. This will clearly solve all the problems if we just put the book back. Yeah. And then her and her dad have this like conversation about like, it's like a really strange thing where it's like, just be home. There's some shit going down. And she's like, okay. And we see Ruthie has a new zit, which will play into the story later.
Oh yeah.
And also like,
which is kind of weird because
oh, go ahead.
Like the zip pops are like a, so like do the stories like kind of come into effect even before they even start getting written?
I guess we had to have time for those spider babies to develop.
I guess.
And also like during this scene, you can see a box of cornflakes, just very prevalent. So I was like sponsored by cornflakes, clearly. This is the only thing, like the only label you can just clearly see in the shop.
Yeah.
And then she sees the book is back. And Augie's story has begun writing itself. And they try to rip the pages, but it doesn't matter because the next page it bled through, apparently. Literally, it bled through. And it's the toe story, which is always the one I think of when I think of scary stories to tell in the dark, is the toe story. So they're like, Augie, just be aware of the toe.
Yeah.
And he has this stew that randomly appeared in his fridge that he never asked any questions about, and his parents didn't know existed.
I mean, I can understand. I've just snatched shit out of the fridge and started chowing down.
But he's on the phone with his mom, and he's like, "This stew," and she's like, "What stew?" And he's like, "Well, there's stew here." It's like, okay, if they didn't make it and you didn't make it, where did it come from?
Yeah.
But nevertheless. He starts eating it.
Food.
And he tastes the toe, this big ass toe.
Like that kind of stuff kind of grosses me out a little bit, because
especially when you hear like the crunch.
Yeah, like I already have like a little bit of a little bit of a fear of like just finding something off like in my food, and it's like
a whole ass toe.
Like gross.
He like pulls it out through his mouth.
Yeah, that's just, he's like sucking on it.
Quentin Tarantino would love this.
Like, no, that particular thing just like grosses me out.
And then Augie hears the voice after he sees the toe and some other body parts in the stew, which is like the "Where's my toe" voice. And then we see it creeping through the hallway. Very good effects. This thing looks just like it does Well,
Oh yeah.
it looks like the illustration from another story in Scary Stories, but
Yeah.
like they do a good job of recreating like the
It's
face of
it's
it.
it's a very like distinct look. I know
Yeah,
which one which picture you're talking about.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
think about it.
stuck with me for life.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know which story it's a part of
It was
specifically.
part of like the bride or something like that.
Mm,
But yeah, like they just borrowed the image to make the
yeah,
monster here.
which it looks great. It really
Yeah,
does.
looks
It's
great.
very creepy, and the way it moves, like it's kind of
Yeah, very
off
very
putting me.
methodical.
Hmm.
So he hides under the bed, and then is drug under by the monster, who we see full close up, and then
Yeah.
he's drug into the wall, and so
Hmm.
Augie's gone, and Stella's like, "Oh man, it's my fault. Everything's my fault." And their mom somehow is tied into it. It's like, okay, your mom chose to leave you. That has nothing
Yeah.
to do with that. But you did bring this ghost back with the book thing, so
Yes.
this is actually
Yeah.
kind of your fault.
It kind of is. So.
Unrelated to your other trauma, this is probably
Yeah.
your fault.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and they did say this weird thing like, this time the book reads you. I said, is this a tagline for like another shitty movie? Like,
I think what it is that the stories being written is like some like it like what is it? It's like related to the person in a way. Like
yeah, but like the books read you. That's a bit cheesy.
yeah,
Like, let's
it really
dial it
is,
back a
but
little bit, So they talk to Chuck and Ruthie, tell them Augie's gone. Ruthie's like, "Yep, don't believe this stuff. I got a play to be in." But Chuck's in because what else was he gonna do?
yeah.
They burn the book. Book doesn't burn. Come on, you should know that wasn't gonna work. So they go to study Bellows at the library, trying to find public records, which is
Yeah.
incredibly difficult to do.
Yes.
So they spend like all day just researching to try to find out anything about Sarah Bellows. And there's talk of her knowing black magic, which would definitely explain all of this other spoopy shit.
Oh, yeah.
And then they noticed that she wrote stories for her entire family. So she killed all of her family with scary stories, like the Wendigo, which was mentioned, and things like that. So I thought that was neat that they meant. I think some other stories there.
Yeah, I think that Wendigo story was specifically for her father.
Yeah, it was for her father. Yes.
Yeah.
So the red spot story begins. So it's Ruthie's story. And so she has this huge bump on her face, which can no longer be covered by foundation. And so she goes to pop the zit in the bathroom, but she sees a little spider leg come out of it. And then it explodes into a bunch of spiders, which have nested in her face. But she doesn't die. She's just like wounded.
Just she get. I think they do.
And heavily traumatized
and everything. Yeah, I mean, I would be like,
it's like, fucked up.
I wouldn't be
able fucked up.
That. I wouldn't be able to handle that. Like regardless of the face bursting, but like just being covered in just like little
spiders,
bits.
Thousands of spiders.
Just fucking, it'd be horrible. I would hate it. I wouldn't be able to sleep well for like weeks or probably ever again after that crap.
And Stella sees Sarah's shadow in the bathroom when they're saving Ruthie, so they know like, oh, it has to be her. It's like, yeah, we knew that.
Yeah,
before.
Like, I mean, it's her book, her like the house she was in, the.
Did we think that there was some supernatural things completely unrelated to her that was happening around us?
It's like, no, she's just been by happenstance, just been like there.
Chuck's like, I had this weird dream about a red room and a pale lady, and it's like, oh man, that's probably gonna come up later, isn't it? You're damn right, Chuck. So they visit Lulu, who was like a child when Sarah Bellows things was happening. And she goes all crazy lady on them, talking about like she loved the music box and like black magic, and oh, you shouldn't have touched the book. Makes no sense. Adds nothing to the plot. They did not need to
Yeah.
go here.
Yeah. But you
Other than to
shouldn't
be
have touched the
like
book.
creepy lady.
Yeah.
But she is right. You should not have touched the book.
Yeah.
So they go to like a hospital. They're trying to
Yeah.
find like patient files.
Yeah. Because Cerebrals was like what, like put to like a psych ward kind of thing. Yeah.
Which her brother was in charge of.
Yeah.
So they had to go find the files in the red room. And Chuck's like, fuck that. No red room for me.
Yeah.
It's like, wouldn't you want to be like with them the whole time? You wouldn't want to like split off from the group.
Like this line of thinking isn't bad. You know, like he has this premonition of something that might happen to him. And he's like, I just want to avoid that. But it immediately ends when his friends are like, well, we're not going to follow you out. Like, I'm not going to be by myself after hearing something, like thinking of something like that. And then witnessing what I've witnessed. I like safety in numbers at this point. Everyone's gotten killed by by
themselves.
By themselves and by spooky spirit shit. Like,
so
I'm going to be around people.
Chuck instead goes exploring. And so they find some files. And basically Sarah was locked away because she was born an albino. And that was like deep shame to the family that she was just pale.
It's like pale. I can't, I have difficulty being in the sun. Give me some SPF.
It's like,
dude.
She was already a woman and now she's a pale woman. Like, fucked up.
Yeah.
And so the family owned like a paper mill, which was running mercury into the water, which poisoned children. But instead, they're like, we're just going to blame Sarah. So they just torture her until she admits to killing the children so that she'll stop getting tortured.
Yeah, they even find a little like a wax roller.
Of the recording of the torture.
Yeah, on it. Which is kind of neat seeing like that late, like such like, early on technology for like recording, like in a movie.
Yeah.
I feel like hardly anyone even knew like those little wax things.
I wouldn't have known that had this movie not done that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So now they know the truth that Sarah was innocent, but now she's killing people. So it's not exactly so innocent anymore.
Like it makes sense if she just, stopped at the family.
Yeah, he murdered your family after that. Makes total sense. But like, now you're doing a bit much.
Yeah, you're going a little too loose here.
Meanwhile, Chuck is running around the hospital and gets stuck in a red room. Well, hallway, technically.
Yeah. I kind of like how they set off the alarm and that
and
makes
then that makes it red.
Yeah. I like how it's like not just like a red room. It's just like, oh no, now everything is red now. Now you're fucked.
And he immediately knows it too. He's like, oh shit. Yeah. And then we see this pale round lady.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, cause I remember that illustration from the books as well. They really hit that one like that nail on the head with that design.
And so essentially it's like he keeps turning hallways and it's just getting closer. Every time he turns around, the lady will get closer. She's moving very, very slowly, but will like teleport every time you move. Yeah. So he keeps turning and it's like more until it's like right there. And then it like hugs them and absorbs them. Yeah.
It's like, and like she like the creature kind of like, it looks almost like, what's the word? Like inviting. Well, it's trying to portray. It's literally
trying to hug him.
Yeah. Like it's like, I'm just trying, I want to hug you to death.
I want to hug you so hard that I absorb you.
Yeah. Like, and that's another thing I find really creepy about it. It's just how inviting it feels like. I feel like it seems to be, while also being just fucking strange.
Yeah, it's because it's not like scary. It's just like weird.
Yeah, especially like how wide
how it's shaped.
Is. Yeah, and everything's shaped. It's weird. It's like that's very like a really good design for a creature.
And then Stella and Ramon are arrested.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Ramon's arrested. Stella's like, he's like, yeah, well, you're white, you can go. And so she calls her dad and is all like, I didn't leave you if I die, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, way to really alarm him. Like, I understand what she's doing. It's like, if I die, I don't want him to think like I ran away or something.
Yeah.
But still, like, you just freaked him the fuck out.
Yeah, like imagine being on the other end of that call. You're just chilling there. You're just like, oh, look at that. I'm gonna pick up the phone. It's like, it's like I might die. It's like, shit. Like that's not whole night ruined.
And so then we find out that Ramon was dodging the draft, which is this is the second movie this month that we've had draft dodge storylines.
Yeah.
Basically because his brother was killed in Vietnam, and he doesn't want to also die in Vietnam.
Which
can't blame anyone for that.
Yeah. I mean, think it back, I probably would have been a draft dodger. But
honestly, I probably would have been on the same route. It's not something you really, if you're forced to go to war where you'll probably die, it's not exactly something a lot of people want to do.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
But the next story's being written, and it's the Me Tai Doty Walker story. And it combines a couple of stories for this one. And Ramon's like, oh shit, that one's me, isn't it? And a head falls down the chimney, and the sheriff just shoots it.
Yes, and this is what I'm talking about. He is the most rational. As soon as something weird happens, he's like, what? Blam, blam. Fucking.
But unlucky for him that this was already an animated corpse, so it just puts itself together and snaps his neck. And so this is the Jangly Man, who is like played by a contortionist. So like this thing really moves weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, they just had a contortionist, and they had to like CG where the head was, like, because obviously you can't have someone's head there. But yeah, kudos to hire like actual like actual professional like contortionist to do this, because to make it more authentic looking with the movements.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Silent Hill movies. First one with the nurses, they hired professional dancers.
Yeah.
And the one after that just kind of hired, good looking ladies and put them in, nurse outfits, and they just it really is a difference.
There is. It's all in the movement. And the way he like shoves his body through the cell to like get Ramon, it's very like, ugh.
Yeah, he's like crushing his like noggin.
Yeah.
Shoving it in.
So Ramon's like, all right, I'm gonna lead the Jangly Man away. You go figure out what you gotta do to get Sarah to stop this shit. So we get Spoopy car ride where Jangly Man's all on top of the car and shit. And Ramon pins it with the car, but it's the Jangly Man, so it just like disconnects, reconnects. It's very hard to trap. So Stella goes to plead with Sarah, and instead gets the haunted house story, where basically she's Sarah in this flashback. Kind of weird how this one works. I guess because they're so similar, she's like, well, now you'll really know what it's like to be me. And so like the family's hunting her down because she told the people about the mercury. And she's taken to the room where she meets Sarah, who appears. And Stella pleads to her. She's like, oh, tell your story. And so Stella's like, well, fuck, here's the pen. Write it. Say it. So she writes it in her own blood. And Sarah stops.
Yeah.
So the monsters go away. Ramon and Stella go, but they have to figure out they're like on a road trip now to figure out how to bring Augie and Chuck back. I guess they're like, fuck Tommy, he was an asshole, but like, we'll get the other two. And that's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yeah. I wonder if they will sequel that. I wonder.
I mean, they plan to, but I don't know if it's still going to happen. Could be a while. So we don't have very many fun facts about this. We already talked about the contortionist. Albinism, which is, the albino gene. It's a double recessive gene. So it's incredibly difficult to pass on. Like both parents had to have the recessive gene in them. And it is like a 1 in like so many shot. Like it's a
Mm.
ridiculous number. It also could be a product of incest, which implies the family could have been incestuous, which, a lot of old-timey rich families were.
Yeah.
So, there's
Keeping the family.
another layer to there,
Yeah.
And then the orderlies are actually the ones that Chuck passes. They're talking about the boxer George Foreman, and that like, oh yeah, like now he's known for his grills, but he was a boxer. He's like, they're like, yeah, he could win the title by 1973, and he does actually win the title from Smoking Joe Frazier in 1973. So that was like a little fun thing they threw in there, and it's like a background conversation. It's not prevalent, but I liked they tried to like tie into the times like subtly, not like in your fucking face.
It's the stuff like that lets you feel like you're in the time period.
Because sometimes Stranger Things will be like, hey, it's the 80s. Did you know it's the 80s? Remember the 80s?
Yeah. That's like every Stranger Things like episode after like season 1.
Yeah,
after season 1, it's like, hey, we're still in the 80s. It's not the 90s yet. We haven't gone that far in, so it's still the 80s. And there's a Pepsi.
So lots of advertising, but in the 80s.
Yeah.
Lots of references, but
remember
80s.
How the cans used to look in the 80s?
You remember how the bags were? Like, you remember Doritos? Like, way before it was like all like generic and shit? You remember that?
Remember arcades? Like, those were in the 80s.
You remember when skating rinks weren't just used for drugs?
Like, God.
So yeah, it's nice to have a subtle there. And also, like, for some reason, like I said, this takes place during the Nixon election. I don't know why they chose this specifically. Like, maybe because that was like that time of year, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Familiar faces. Stella, played by Zoe Margaret Coletti, was in the remake of Annie and Fear of the Walking Dead. Tommy was played by Austin Abrams, and he was in The Walking Dead, Paper Towns, and some new show called Dash and Amy, where he plays Dash. So, he's getting roles. And the sheriff was played by Gil Bellows from Parkland and Shawshank Redemption. This movie was directed by Andre Overdahl from Autopsy of Jane Doe and Troll Hunter, and was written by the writers who wrote the Lego movie.
Oh, cool.
Good for them. Good for them.
Yeah. Troll Hunters. I've been meaning to give that a watch.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but I figured it was worth a mention. So cool. Give me your final thoughts and opinions on scary stories to tell in the dark before we end our spoopy season.
Yeah. It was it's a good, horror movie. It's fine. Like it's not, it's completely different from like all the slashers and stuff that we've been watching a lot now.
Yeah. It was kind of a nice, like, but it felt like Halloween, which was nice.
Yes. Yeah. It was it was really good. I didn't really see any downsides in the acting department. I think everyone did pretty well. Monsters looked great. It is a very good I would say like a children's, like early adolescence horror film. You might want to, if you're going a little young, you might want to,
it does have disturbing imagery.
So, imagery can be hard, but
also we read these books when we were children. So.
Oh yeah, we did read the book. Yeah, if you're someone who just doesn't like the gore viscera stuff, it's
alternative,
really good. Yeah, it's a very good movie for that. While still keeping with the whole horror aspect and keeping you on edge. I don't really have too much bad to say other than it's good. It's a good movie.
I don't like that they go to find them.
Groundbreaking.
I wish that it was just like, Chuck and Augie are just fucking dead.
Oh,
and
yeah.
But now everything's cool. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I wish we would have had that instead of like this lead up. We don't need a sequel to this. It doesn't need to happen. It could happen, but it doesn't need to happen. We don't need to set it up at the end of the first movie, especially because how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
So
I didn't have like any sort of expectation of there ever being a sequel.
I would prefer a prequel where we see what happens to the family, like their stories.
Yeah.
Seeing like the father and the brothers and their story.
Yeah.
The revenge.
Watching
plot.
them. watching them face their stuff and being inevitably killed by the bug, that would be actually really cool.
That'd be a good way to do it. But you didn't even need to set that up. You already did. You already talked about that.
Yeah.
That's fine. That exists.
Yeah.
It's really my only complaint with a lot of this movie is that it tries a little too hard for be like, well, you could do another one. It's like, or just tell the story you're telling now, and we'll worry about the other stuff later.
Yeah, a little bit. That's sequel baiting thing. It's a little bit. I feel that is like a product of the time of nowadays.
Yeah, that is a modern filmmaking.
Yeah.
Well, a modern mainstream movie kind of thing.
Yeah,
a studio thing.
Like it can do well. Sequels can do well. Like I think the greatest thing is Godfather Part 2.
But like your sequel needs to like have a purpose.
But yeah, like not like it's
other than like we need to make another one.
Now. Yeah.
So that is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Join us next time as we head into November and we're doing Jurassic Park. It's gonna be dinosaurs and shit. It's gonna be great.
Oh, yeah.
So until next time, stay safe, stay nerdy.